my path to becoming a mother was very unexpected in a way. I was not planning it as much as I would like, now. But going back, I feel like becoming a mother at the age 21 gave me a lot of freedom to understand what motherhood is. I was not prepared. I was just received that as a big gift from nature, and I started going into this step by step. And when I realized that womanhood and motherhood is so connected, and by the time I became a mother, I was kind of feeling that I quite not a woman yet, and having your own experience gives us understanding what mistakes we have done in a way. And it gives me understanding that, wow, I can actually shift this and help women to go through an order of becoming a mother. So first we're becoming a woman, and then we expand our nature, we understand our depthness, and we can dive into the motherhood. And when I become a mother, my experience was so beautiful and easy, and in a way ecstatic and orgasmic. I could say, I can use this word because I experienced that a lot of women didn't really believe that this experience can happen in this way. And they would ask me millions of questions, telling me that I'm crazy, that I would do it like naturally, without technologies, going to the farm, having just nature around me and the beautiful midwives. I would realize that, wow, there is so much fear in women that I would not even imagine, this percentage of fear that made me realize that, wow, maybe I can shift a little bit women's consciousness about what birth is, because birth matters a lot, and we have to face the birth nowadays. It is a big revolution, I would say, that we have to start as a women, but as collective womanhood circle, or I would say sisterhood. We can name it, any names, but this is something that we have to face nowadays. So I would say that going into motherhood teach me how to become a woman. But as a doula, as a woman practitioner, I teach women a little bit of the opposite. I want women to start become women first, because womanhood is a perfect preparation for the labor. And the labor itself is a perfect preparation for the motherhood. So that's how I would probably put it in a short story, how I became a mother and a doula.
Beautiful. You mentioned the farm. Can you share more
Yes.
about your experience there and what it is?
The farm is an incredible place that still exists nowadays. It's run by Gaskin. She is a worldwide known midwife, and she's a beautiful speaker. I think she still catches babies, but you can find her speeches, you can find her books, her documentaries. She's been a teacher and an inspiration for me. So when I found out about the farm and how all of those hippies caravaned in the 80s, they took those little trucks and they were on the way from California to Tennessee, I got really inspired, and I realized that's the place I would like to give my birth, and I had no doubts about it. So we arrived a month before to the farm. That's the kind of requirements to be there a month before. And it's a beautiful settings like here. It's beautiful nature. It's very calm. It's honoring pleasure, I would say. And that's, I think, as a society, we forget to honor the pleasure. And the farm gives you that feeling of becoming the nature yourself, because they don't give you any medical, medicine. They don't give you any technology. So you totally blend with nature, and beautiful doulas, beautiful midwives, like all in their charm still, I saw them, I witnessed them from the documentary, which called The Birth, And all of those midwives who attempted my birth were like in their 20s. And then I saw them and they're in their 60s, and I was like, wow, I recognize this woman, I recognize this woman. So my birth was magical. Both times I had babies there. And it's a beautiful place to train to become a midwife. And it's a beautiful place to have kids. So I think it's a very big treasure for today, still have those kind of places that actually fight for our rights, fight for the system not to be crucial on the women. You know, doula work is a very ancient art form of attending a woman or a couple and supporting them not only at the labor, but preparing them on this beautiful 9-month journey. You try to chant with the mother, you try to give a massage, stretch, diet. There are so many components that a lot of us thinking that doula only attends the birth at the moment. It's actually quite magical when you can afford someone who can be with you all of this 9 months. Because think about it, 9 months we are creating this beautiful magical connection with the baby. And then if the woman chooses to go to a hospital, for example, she needs to understand that nowadays, if a woman wants unmedical labor and she still wants to give a birth at the hospital, her chances are very, very small that it's going to happen that way. It's better to have a birth plan before and to realize why you want to do a hospital birth, because there's a lot of doulas that do not attempt even hospitals. So doula is in a way like your person who tells you there is no fear, because you know that you can do anything with your body. We have to remind ourselves that our bodies are the measure of the universe. You know, as soon as we as a society will start fear our own bodies, as soon as we start realizing that we are earth in a way, you know, we are capable of bringing life in this world, and 9 months creating this magical connection, and then we're going to the hospital, and sometimes women wants epidural or oxytocin or whatever. It means basically that we are telling to our babies, this is it. Since now on, you are on your own. And quite a lot of times when I talk with women and I try to explain them, why do you still want to go to the hospital? What is that little percentage of fear that you have in you that still kind of like, oh, what if something happens? What if... We have to continue that magical connection and not let the baby go on its own, because it's quite a big journey. You know, they say in Vedic traditions that the suffering of the birth is bigger than the suffering of the death. And when you look at it, it's quite connected, because as above, so below. We look at the woman's body, it's very dualistic. We have our lips, our neck, 2 lungs, and the heart. The same we have over here. We have lips, uterus tube is our neck, 2 ovaries, and the most magical and mystical organ is our uterus. And when we start feeling the connection between our uterus, our heart, our third eye, we fall into the pregnancy. We fall into the motherhood naturally, without interventions of this mandated actually rules. You know, like you mentioned that Ina May had a terrible experience which led her to a beautiful creation that she now supporting so many women, but her own experience was quite terrible. And it's happening now, 30, 40 years later. It's crazy that it's still happening now. We have to shift the consciousness of women and not try to change the system, because we're gonna just waste time of changing the system. Okay, we have these machines, we have these doctors, let them be. Let's not fight. Let's concentrate on how we can change our consciousness in order these women just not even want to go to the hospitals. As a culture, we are trying to participate in that the inventions of human are superior to the nature. And I think we need to stop for a moment, realize where we are in this situation, because if we're going to continue, we're going to go, like Ina May said, off the cliff. And we need to bring it more to nature, because if we look to all of the mammals, you know, we need to give a woman relaxation, the sense of relaxation, and calmness. And that's the number one thing for a woman, is calmness. When we are calm, like nature, you know, we are calm and we are the creators of the beauty. Again, like nature, all of those things gonna go naturally, you know, the breastfeeding, motherhood. But if we are trusting more the technology than the nature, if we're trusting someone who doesn't even know how it is to give labor, then there is questions, what is going on with a woman's mentality and woman's consciousness? What is going on with having pleasure, you know? Like, there isn't any of us in here that are not a result of a pleasure. Think about it, right? There was one day somewhere years ago that someone had a desire which led to an orgasm, and then me and you appeared. So we should not be ashamed of giving women pleasure. And the number one thing, I think, is to remind women that we are very responsible for our pleasures. You know, and I feel like orgasmic or ecstatic birth reminds us that even pain can transform into pleasure. And it's a beautiful dance, because when we are in the womanhood and when we are doing practices, when we are connected to our low belly, when we are connected to our uterus, that's itself the preparation for the calmness. All of the mammals in nature, they know how to go through the labor. Just they have this knowledge. Same, we have this knowledge. Let's just activate it. And we need women. We need community. Back in the days, labor was always a communal thing. You know, for example, women had a lot of children, 8, 10, and every new child, she wanted to feel like that first child. So women would come and help, women would cook. Let's ask for this help, because the more women becoming mental or spiritual doulas on this planet, the more happy births we'll have. And the more happy births we have, the more love we create. And we know to what that leads to. I should not explain that.
And kind of recentering motherhood and parenthood back into society. Like you were saying, we're trying to fit into a male system, really, but we need to return to our nature. Can you talk more about the pain-pleasure connection?
Absolutely, yes. I would give you a beautiful example. For example, if me and you right now would start dancing with pleasure, what would happen anatomically in our body? When we have a pleasurable experience, our blood starts oxygenate, circulate, and nitric oxide is released. It's a beautiful hormone that's released in our body when we have pleasure. And it leads to turn on other neurotransmitters, like better endorphin, for example, which we know leads to reducing stress, creating the feeling of euphoria. Prolactin is another beautiful hormone. It's actually a bonding hormone. So when a woman experiencing those hormones, just having 30 seconds of a beautiful dance, for example, we have pumping those hormones in our blood, which reducing the stress, reducing the depression, reducing this loneliness, and the consequences of no having these beautiful hormones leads to big depression. And we are actually witnessing nowadays that women having twice more depression than men. Why? I think it's because we've been taught since we were kids to take care of everyone first. We have to find equilibrium in those and be responsible to have pleasure ourselves first. You know, not the whatever crumbs left from the cake, those are yours. No. First, you have this big, beautiful slice of cake if you want, and then you take care of others. You know, if mother's happy, everyone is happy. So that's a good mantra to remind ourselves why women have to constantly be in pleasure. Pleasure is, I would say, the key. We have 8,000 nerve endings in woman's body that representing pleasure. So if we are constantly practicing pleasure feelings, and I'm not even talking about sex, you know, I'm talking about pleasure in a bigger spectrum, like in a rainbow. It can be, I don't know, running with your dog, or kissing with your dog, or having like a beautiful smoothie bowl, but doing it with a pleasure. Not just doing it because, oh, I don't have time, I have to. No, you sit down and you enjoy it, and you bring this pleasure. As soon as we turn off those bands for pleasure, we start to be more grounded, we start to be more enjoyable of life, and realize that the birth itself is a miracle, and it can also bring pleasure and certain feeling of going deeper into yourself, understanding yourself, like that you are no longer the person that you've been before, you know? You're going through this transition. So facing pleasure and pain is very important. I feel like in our society we're constantly honoring hard work, suffering, and I'm not even talking about pain, because pain has to become our friend as well. We have to honor pleasure and pain and let it take turns. Because in labor, you do have those moments when the pain just comes into your body and you don't know what to do with this pain. That's why when you have a doula or a midwife or a woman who can calm you down and put you in that space of reminding yourself, reminding you that you're safe, you can go through it and you can transform it into the pleasure. As a doula, I love to work with future moms or present moms from the beginning. That's the most beautiful experience, because the birth starts in our mind. And as soon as the woman starts working with her thoughts, with her visions, what she sees every day when she wakes up, it's so extremely important, then it will be easier for her to accept the pain when it comes to you, because it does come, you know. It's very hard to describe this type of pain, very hard, and usually women like try to explain what. It's very hard to describe, but there's no need to know. You just have to be mentally prepared to honor it as much as we have to honor pleasure. We're just honoring it, and with your breath, with your mindset, with your body, with your moves, you can transform it into the pleasure. It's a meditation. I would say it's the biggest spiritual meditation that you can experience in your life, becoming a mother and realizing that, you know, something this big, tight, can open as a beautiful flower and give a life. We should think about this more often, you know. Thoughts are a beautiful way of understanding how the nature works, how our world is being designed, and how much we want to deconstruct, redesign. I don't think the actual intention of a doctor is to harm women. It's just lack of knowledge. It's just lack of understanding what system he chose to be, you know. And I feel like a curious doctor or a curious midwife, if she works in a hospital, if she feels that there is ways to prevent these interventions, she should go into it and ask why. But I feel like we can't ask questions nowadays in the hospitals. We just do it the way we were told, and that's the scary part, you know, that we can't actually do our ways the way we want it. So of course, having labor in at the house, at the birthing centers are the most magical place you can do it. In nature, I mean, this is the most extremist, but I witnessed beautiful birth in nature, and it's incredible.
So, of course, we're speaking to a returning to this being the innate way. There's a place for medical intervention, but we seem to have become completely reliant on it and afraid of or fearful of, our body's ability. And this comes into worthiness in general. And I've spoken to you briefly about worth, about self-care practices. So what would you like to share in terms of building our self-worth?
What is self-worth for a woman? I feel like it's not about how much we achieved, how much hard work we've done. I think it's about how much we were given just because, just the way we are. And the more we are given just the way we are, the more self-worth we gain. And the more feminine we are, the more we are given. It's a very interesting circle, you know? I feel like it has to start with our childhood first. And again, I mentioned the ban of pleasure. We have to go back in the childhood and recognize where and when we were not allowed to have a pleasure. Because working with women and asking them to write their fears, for example, or those examples, you would be amazed what stories women tell. For example, you know, in the kindergarten when you couldn't put a towel or a blanket or a pillow between your legs, you know, sometimes you feel cozier to put something between your legs. And the teachers would say, no, you can't do it. It's like you can't put anything between your legs. And subconsciously for a little girl, it's already a ban for pleasure. She can't enjoy the way she wants to feel her body. I would recommend going back to those kind of experiences. And of course, some of us have beautiful childhood, beautiful pleasure experiences, but there could be one moment that could change the game. And it's important to work with your subconsciousness because women act through the subconsciousness. And the moment we realize that bringing pleasure back to our life through certain practices, I can share with you, for example, one beautiful practice is called the butterfly. It's more interesting to show it because you have to lay down and you're kind of opening your legs as a butterfly, but very, very, very slowly. And you're opening them up and then you're closing them together. It gives you the sensation of a slight orgasm when you do it properly. And, you know, talking about those feelings of orgasms in the body, in ancient times, women had 30% of feeling of orgasm all the time. Just think about that. 30% of orgasm all the time. And how did they reach that? With the breathing. With the certain techniques of the breathing, how I mentioned about our mystical organ, heart and the uterus. So these certain breathing techniques activates our uterus. It brings a lot of blood there. Sometimes you can feel nauseous and some people start fainting. It's normal because it's been sleeping. You know, when you wake something up, it needs time to wake up. So imagining that you're creating a pump inside of your body. You have your uterus flowing, breathing, and usually we have to breathe with our lower belly, never with our chest. And this is the number one mistake that we do. We're constantly doing this when we're having anxiety and stress. No, we have to go deep into our lower bellies and start breathing. Inhaling, exhaling. And as soon as you start activating your uterus, your lower belly, you can add the vagina. The vagina and the uterus creating a beautiful pump energy where you start realizing that you're no longer in your head. You are here, and it's way safer in here. You know, for the most extreme women who love to be in their head, this is an amazing practice. Start with your breathing. Inhaling, your belly goes out, vagina relaxes. Exhaling, uterus and the lower belly go in, vagina contracts. So we start doing this breath every minute, perfectly, you know, ideally. You walk, you do it. You eat, you do it. It's kind of like a Kegels exercise, but again, the difference is that you're doing it with pleasure. That's the number one key, that you have to do it with pleasure. Otherwise, it's going to be like a machine, you know, like you just do it to achieve something. We have to stop thinking about result, and we have to enjoy the process. When we enjoy the process, there is pleasure. And I really, really hope that the women will try this, because it will give you a beautiful sensation. And during sex or during your labor, when you can control and when you know how your uterus works, because you don't have to push in labor. That's the key. You know, we were taught you have to push out the baby. It's actually the uterus is pushing. It's such a strong muscle, I would say. It's such a, you know, even if the woman doesn't eat for 1 month being pregnant, the uterus gives exact amount of nutrients and vitamins as if she would eat. So that's incredible. How? You know, how? But during the war times, during the hard times, women were not having as good diet as now we have. And they still were managing to have a beautiful birth, because this organ is our supporter, is our everything in a way. The more we put attention in here, then we can start rising this and putting it into our heart. You know, there's a lot of beautiful practices. Like another one is called stones and bubbles. And the stones is all of that heaviness that woman has, all of that sadness, all of that pain. You can collect it in your heart and imagine that there are rocks, all of this energy of sadness. And then you start shifting those rocks down into your lower belly. You put them down. And then during the meditation, you start realizing that you can transform them to the bubbles that can start rising up into your heart chakra. The woman acts through the subconsciousness. And the more we're going to be in touch with our subconsciousness, and how we can be in touch, through certain practices, through women practices, activating the uterus, activating the yoni, activating our heart. You know, all of this, you can't reach to the heart unless you start low activation from the lower chakras, from the grounding chakras. And this is quite important in labor, to understand that when you opening up, you expand. You know, your volume is expanding, right? You are opening. So that's another beautiful practice to do when women try to prepare for labor. It's called the volume practice. You just basically imagining how your lower belly starts to expanding. It's like, you know, when we're wearing those beautiful fluffy skirts and we're trying to spread them around, we can even visualize that we are wearing something fluffy and we're expanding the territory of the room. We can go over territory of the whole district, the city. We're just expanding. And this practice helps women to realize how important the lower belly is before even jumping to the heart. You know, so many practices right now about opening your heart. For us, for a woman, we need to open our lower belly. And this is a number one key, working with our subconsciousness. Because as soon as we tune to our body and we're not terrified of our bodies, we can do miracles. We can just fly. We are so gorgeous. We're so amazing. We can inspire each other. And it's, like they say, kindness goes in the circle and the evil goes one to one. If only one experience happens, it will spread the seeds for other women, like it happened in my experience. I had a beautiful experience of birth, and I was thinking, I can't just not share. I have to encourage women to have the same experience because it's possible. And there is not a lot of sacrifice or even preparation for that. If you are trusting the space where you are, if you are trusting the world where you live, even there's a lot of chaotic events happening, especially now, we have to remind ourselves this is just a relish of the dark times. We are entering a beautiful time. And my hope is that there are more midwives, there are more doulas in this planet that can support women. We need them. Imagine if all the little girls, since they're babies and going to school, having classes of the midwifery, of a doula, of ancient art of how to be a woman. That will be, it will change everything, and the male and the female will become, I don't like this word equal because we're using it a lot nowadays. I would say in harmony, because in a way we need a lot of mother's compassion right now. It's not a gender issue. We need a lot of that mother's compassion on our planet to heal ourselves, to heal us as a society, as a parents, because the baby that's been born at the house is a change agent. The sibling that witnessed that baby being born at the house is a change agent. He's gonna spread. That's how we do the sex education, And the more we have women breastfeeding around the world, the more in States, it's ridiculous how much shame the society can put on you just because you're breastfeeding. And it happens on my own experience as well. We put such a sexual idea, and it's so wrong. This is so wrong, and one of my wishes to change. Imagine if the teacher breastfeeding and she teaching. First of all, it would be very quiet in the classroom. And second, again, the sex education, kids would admire this kind of teacher, and they would put the idol of the mother again back. Like in ancient times, look at all of those goddesses, you name them, Isis, Hathor, they're all of the goddesses of fertility, and they were worshipped so much, more than any other goddesses, because they were the life givers. We have to bring this back. We have to bring the idol of the mother nowadays and give them so much compassion and help. Even if you're a single mother, even if you are full family, it doesn't matter. You are already full. You created a life. So let's honor it. Let's honor it together.
I was at an event of about 150 women up north in Mexico, full of workshops. And one of the women leading the workshops, she was leading song and movement, and she at the same time was breastfeeding her child. And at some points she was doing some crazy dancing around the space, and I was in awe. It was just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. So yes, to teachers who can breastfeed in front of the classroom, I think that's a magical vision. I would love to hear anything you have to share. Just jump quite drastically back to the placenta, because there's such a lack of awareness around the placenta. The more indigenous approach to midwifery, I know, really honors the placenta. There's a lot of ritual involved.
It is. It's a tree of life, if we even look at it, even if we do a print of the placenta, it looks like a tree. So it's a tree of life that we have to honor, and all of the indigenous cultures and practitioners know that we don't throw away placenta, or we don't hide placenta from the mother. In my own experience, I did the print, and I did encapsulation of the placenta because it has a lot of nutrients. It has a lot of, first of all, it has a lot of blood. You know, the reason why it's important not to cut the placenta, for example, and it's called the Lotus Birth. I don't know if you heard of that. When I used to live in Bali, I was working in the Bumi Sihat Center, which is called the Lotus Center Birth, with beautiful Robin Lim. And the idea of this whole ceremony is not to cut the placenta, because when the baby is born and the placenta is still inside of the mother, and then finally when the placenta comes out of the body, it has a lot of blood. And this blood has to circulate and come back to the baby. What we do in the hospitals, we cut the umbilical cord right away, and it's a shock for a baby. So the baby doesn't breathe with the lungs in the beginning, right? The baby breathes through the placenta. So when we cut the umbilical cord, it's such a shock that the baby has to use the lungs. And it's extremely painful for the baby. I mean, we don't know how much we can record with all of these machines, but it's extreme shock for this tiny civilization to be cut off. It's like, you cut off the air. You need the placenta. And another reason why women have to be aware in their labor, I heard so many stories when women were on epidural and they don't even remember what's happened with the placenta. Some women haven't even seen the placenta. Some women don't even know what placenta is. In 21st century, having internet, I was shocked when I discovered this. So having a lotus birth means that we leave the placenta till it's finished pulsating. It can take up to a day. And then people like, how the placenta and how you breastfeed? Yeah, you just put the placenta in a bowl and you breastfeed the baby, and they do a beautiful ceremony with a mantra, with frangipani, and they burning off the placenta in the end. So it's like a full ritual of the baby separating from the placenta and starting to be on its own. Placenta is an ancient knowledge that we have to understand. What is placenta? We have to read. You know, I always tell women, read your anatomy. The more we know about our bodies, the more we know about anatomy itself. Atum, like ancient Egyptians said, it's all about atum. It's all about realizing how our hormones work. I mentioned about, you know, if you know how your brain works, how your heart works, that your heart actually thinks, you know, your heart has neurons as well. Like, I don't want to go deeper in the cardiology thing, but the more we realize about our bodies, and the placenta is a part of our body, the more we're gonna realize how perfect we are, like nature. We are the measure of the universe. The universe is created the same way our bodies, it's our temples. And when I hear women having C-section, they wanting this, I just have a big question, like what kind of fear this woman had in her past, or what kind of trauma she had that she really wants this intervention. Somebody completely stranger is going to cut her. You know, that's I would like to go deeper in working with the women on shifting that fear. Because we are in the age of, I don't want to say age, but quite a period of a time of the fear right now. Fear is everywhere, and the more we gather together, the more we support each other, the more nitric oxide we release. You know, I feel like our society depends on adrenaline. We kind of crave adrenaline. We were talking with you right about this, and I would hope that the society will start to be addicted to oxytocin.
Yes.
Because it binds us. It's kind of create the glue for people treat each other nicer, feel each other nicer, have a compassion to each other, and create this beautiful bond on the planet that we so need. I mean, we know this we need, but sometimes we don't know how to start achieving this. Where are those trails? What should I do? Let's start with our bodies. My hope and my dream is this: the culture, the culture. When I'm saying this word, the cult of a sun, right? A cult, like when we are worshiping the sun, when we are worshiping the moon, when we are worshiping the feminine energy and the male energy, and not trying to say, let's combine everything and be one. We already one, but let's honor that there is a beautiful feminine energy, there is a beautiful male energy, and let's work on that and go deeper with our roots in how we've been created. You know, I feel like just being born as a human doesn't mean that we are humans. We have to do this beautiful journey to become a human. And I feel like for a woman it's the same. We're born in these beautiful bodies, but we need to learn how to become a woman. And learning how to become a woman will give us a better understanding how to be a better mother. And it's not about being just a mother for your kid, you know. I feel like we need to create this bigger consciousness of motherhood where we can take care of each other as a community. That's essential for nowadays, especially because we are lacking of the community, of that sense of you know. I'm coming from Armenia, and Armenian culture is very communal, I would say. It's a very like bonding, like you go to some neighbor and you can eat there. It's a very welcoming culture in a way of how mothers and children interact between each other. And I think there's so many questions about West and East nowadays that we have to take the best from each part and combine them and create something completely new that our society is in need. We kind of like hungry, you know, like when there is no pleasure in our diet as a woman, we start to be very anxious and very depressive. I feel like as a community, there is not enough compassion in our diet. So when we start creating it, we can calm down a little bit and start thinking about what we have done already, you know, what we have done. Start thinking about that.
Thank you for being here and taking these stories and conversations in. We love to hear from you. If you ever feel called to reach out, please do. Learn more about our work at rootedhealing.org and visit our Patreon page to find Sofia's meditation and many other offerings from our guests and growing community. I'm your host, Veronica Stanwell, and I'm sending love to you in this moment. Thank you so much for being here.